Started the recording now of this session with the South Australian Department for Education. I'm Tim Kitchen, I'm Adobe's Senior Education Specialist, and this session is all about Adobe Premiere Pro. Wow, I've just had a conversation with a number of people who have joined us for this webinar who are with me live to find out what their background is with video editing, and it's quite mixed. We've got some people here who've got very little to no background, to some who have done some with applications like iMovie and Premiere Rush, and then some applications that we don't even remember what the name of that application was. But no one seems to have had any experience with Premiere Pro at this stage. So this is going to be very much back right to basics, the very basics of Premiere Pro. And I just want to say right from the outset that Premiere Pro is a professional tool. So when you first open it up, it looks quite intimidating. I'll be helping you get over that initial hurdle so you can at least work out the basics of how to get things started, and then you can go and fly with the basics and create incredible things. But we've only got an hour and 20 minutes together, really, effectively. So we're only going to scratch the surface of what's possible with Premiere Pro, but we will get you started. If you find that it is just too much for you too early on, then keep in mind that Premiere Rush is a cut-down version of Premiere Pro. It's so much simpler and probably more effective if you're finding Premiere Pro just too difficult to cope with. There are a few limits with Premiere Rush, but it does basically everything that any student and teacher would want to do to create a video for maybe 90% of the videos that they create. Spark Video is also an alternative, but that's very, very cut down, very basic. I really recommend Spark Video for people who have never done any video editing before, because it's very intuitive. There's nothing professional about it at all. So there's two other options for you if you find Premiere Pro a little bit of a challenge. So let's get started with this session. The first thing I want you to do for me now is to go into this link, timkitchen.net/washhands. Whoops, I wanted to make that a live link. So I'm going to bring that up on a browser myself and then copy that link and bring it into the chat so that those who are with us live can get it easily. It's timkitchen.net/washhands. I'll bring that into the chat right now. And if you click on that link that's in the chat, you'll get access to this resource page. So this resource page, did that work? Yeah, it did. Wash hands, here we go. And I'll actually open this up in Chrome because it works a bit better in Chrome. The reason why I'm giving you this link is because there's no point starting a video if you haven't got any assets to build. So the number one video editing 101, the first thing you always do with video editing is to manage your assets, manage your files. File management is such an important part of video production. And normally when I'm teaching Premiere Pro properly, it'd be like an all day, or in fact, a 3 or 4 day course to do it properly. And we're doing it in an hour and a half. So we're really just going to do the basics. But what I'd like you to do first of all is just to grab some assets from this site. So the first asset I want you to grab is this image. So if you can do a right click on this image and go save image as, and then that image is called 01-clean-hands. It is a JPEG image. I want you to save it into what's going to be your project folder. And I'm just going to jump back to my slides for a sec to show you that every time you're creating a video project with Premiere Pro, you need to have a project folder. Within that folder, you need to have subfolders. And you can see I've got 3 subfolders. So the first thing we probably would want to do is to actually create a project folder to save your assets into. And I'm going to do that on my desktop. So I'm going to jump onto my Finder, and it's the same with Windows. Just go to your Explorer, go to your desktop, and I'm going to create a new folder. Just do a right-click, create new folder, or whichever way you want to create the new folder. And this project we're going to build together is about hand hygiene. So you can just type in hand hygiene or washing hands or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter as long as you know that this is the project folder. So I'm going to call it washing hands. Inside that folder, I've already got a folder there before. I'm going to call it hand hygiene. Oh, not hang hygiene, make it hand hygiene. There we go. And inside that folder are going to be your 3 subfolders. stills, footage, and audio. So create a subfolder now called stills, then create a subfolder called footage, then create a subfolder called audio. So you should have your project folder called hand hygiene or washing hands. Inside that folder will be 3 other folders: audio, footage, and stills. Every video that you create is made up of those 3 different types of assets: still images, moving images, and audio files. And that's what we're doing here. We're going to organize those assets. So now that you've created your folder structure, jump back to that resource page that I gave you. That's not the right one. And do a right click, as I said before, on the first image that's there. And we're going to look for your project folder and your stills folder, because that's a still image that you're saving, and then save it into your stills folder. So your first asset is now saved, ready to manipulate. Scroll down and you'll see some footage. And this is my daughter here doing a quick piece to camera. If you play it first and then pause it, do a right click on it, you'll then have save video as. And if you save the video, and save it into not the stills folder, but go back to your project folder and open up your footage folder, and that's where you'll save that first bit of footage. Then do the same with the second bit of footage. Just start playing it initially and then pause it. Right click, save video as, and save that also into your footage folder. So in the next couple of minutes, hopefully you've saved 1 JPEG image, which is these hands, 2 video files, which are MP4 files, and then just keep going down through this resource page until you've saved as many assets as you can. The one that we have missed is right at the very top where it says click here for a music backing track. I think if you do a right click, no, I've got to click it open, don't I think? Yeah. It'll start playing some music for you. Then you should be able to right click, save audio as. It's the same with everything else. You play it first, then do a right click, and that's how you can save it. And this one is going to go into the audio folder. Now don't worry if I'm going too fast, because I'm going to give you some time now to work through that process of saving the music track, the still image track, the footage that's there, and then keep going down through this site until you have got as many still images and moving images as you can. You're not going to need all of them, but just see if you can grab as many as you possibly can. Notice that a bunch of people have just joined us. It looks like there's Cindy. So those people who have just joined us, what we're going into now is this resource site, which I've got in the chat, called timkitchen.net/washhands. And we're just grabbing some resources that we're going to use to help build a video in Adobe Premiere Pro. And we're going to go right to basics, because most of the people that are with us at the moment are brand new to Premiere Pro. So we're literally going to be starting from scratch with the basics. And we're pretty much only going to scratch the surface of what's possible in Premiere Pro with the time that we have together. While you're getting those resources organized, and if you did miss the folder structure, let me bring that back up again for you. Your project folder, we're calling it hand hygiene or washing hands, should have 3 subfolders in it, and they should be named stills, footage, and audio, and that's where we're putting our assets. And as I said earlier, if you missed it, file management is a crucial part of video editing when it comes to working with a professional tool like Premiere Pro. Okay, so hopefully you're all right, or you're starting that process and you're getting that down. While you're getting those assets organized into your project folder, and Abigail's saying folder structure, project folder, yeah, that's it. Thanks, Abigail. So if we lose this slide, which we're about to lose, Abigail's just giving you a note of what the names of the folders should be. Thank you, Abigail, much appreciated. I'm going to play a quick video. This video is a very famous person who is now we're partnering with, and she does all of her video clips with Adobe Premiere Pro.
For me, creativity starts with what ifs. Like, what if it takes place in a white void? Or maybe beige? No, black. What if there's fire? Did that already. What if there are some old cars? Or not? Let's see that in slow motion. Yeah, it's too much. What if it's in suburbia? That's not right. What about my look? Meh. Cool. What if it happens in the rain? Yeah, this is it. Now, create what's true to you.
Just that I'd share that because if you share that same clip to your students, especially if they're teenagers, they will think that's just amazing because she is probably the #1 female artist in the world at the moment, working with Adobe because she feels as though being creative with digital tools, such as the Creative Cloud tools, is so important. And if you share that with your students, that will really motivate them as well. I'm going to share a couple more clips a little bit later, but I want to know right now, go to the chat, tell me, oh, thank you, Cindy, fantastic. Put the link in so you can share that with your students. Can you go to the chat now and tell me how you're going? I want to know if you've created a project folder and you've got your assets in your subfolders and you're actually ready to start building a video with me, say yes in the chat. If you're just wanting to watch this and not actually make it a workshop, you don't want to actually do hands-on, then give me a no in the chat. And if you're really struggling at the moment, give me a maybe in the chat. Just want to get an idea of who's working with me. Julie's saying, have stored all up to step 9 of the... Fantastic, Julie. That's more than enough. Well done. Linda saying, all good so far. This was used in Russia. Yes, we used the same resources in Russia. You probably already got them from the last session we did together. Abigail's good to go. Heather's no. So Heather, you're just watching, which is perfectly fine. And of course, we're recording this. You can always go back and do it with the recording at your own leisure. Rose is good to go. Catherine's good to go. Rachel joined late, so just setting it all up so I'll watch. Okay, Rachel, that's fine. Otherwise, if you're really quick, the link to the resources is in the chat and the subfolders are in the chat as well for you to put them in. Rob is a maybe. So Rob, is there anything we can do to help you at the moment?
No, I'm all good. Just grabbing some resources.
Okay, no worries. And Catriona, I think that's how you pronounce it, is all good to go as well. All right, that's terrific. Now you notice I've only got a few resources myself, so I'm going to just jump and grab a couple more of them so that I've caught up with you. I've already got 2 bits of footage. I'm going to grab this other still image here, maybe this one, into the stills folder. And I'll grab this one as well, just another still image. And that should be enough. I might grab some more later. Okay, so now that we've got the assets, we can open up Premiere Pro. So go ahead and look for the Adobe Premiere Pro app in your applications, or I've got it in my dock so I can go straight to it because I use it nearly every day. It's probably my favorite Adobe application. It's probably the one I most use virtually on a daily basis because I think that video is such an important media to work with, and I create videos literally on a daily basis for so many of the things that I do when I'm teaching. I just think it's such an important tool for any communicator to work with. So I'm opening up Premiere Pro, and you can see when you first open it up, it comes up with a page that looks similar to this. There might be a landing page or an onboarding page if it's the first time you've opened it. Just close that down until you've found a page that has a button that says New Project, and that's when you'll know you're ready to work with me and we'll work together. Well, because some of you might be working with low-powered machines, you might find it takes a while for Premiere Pro to actually open up. So I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. The recommendation is that you should have a laptop that is at least a minimum of 8 gigabytes of RAM to run Premiere Pro. Now that could be complicated, that could be problematic. If you've got a laptop that is more than, say, 4 years old, because the standard back 4 or 5 years ago was 4 gig of RAM, but the standard for the last 3 years has been 8 gig of RAM, so it usually isn't an issue. You've got a relatively up-to-date computer. If you're working with 4 gig of RAM, you're probably going to struggle. You're really probably going to struggle with a lot of applications, but it might be time to start working on trying to get something a bit more powerful, especially if you want to invest in this type of application. While you're getting yourself set up, I've got this slide here to share to show you where Adobe Premiere Pro fits into the realm of Adobe Creative Cloud applications. And you can see it fits into here. Oh, that's Photoshop. Where's Premiere Pro? There, where it is there, right at the end here, Premiere Pro. It fits into the powerful, high-impact apps, professional apps that are used in schools and universities, as well as the highest level of industry. So production houses like Marvel Studios, had a mental break for a second. Marvel Studios, they use Premiere Pro and After Effects to actually put together their blockbuster films. So it's used at the highest level of multimedia, which is just awesome. But I actually know I could name maybe 10 primary schools that I've worked with over the last few years who use Premiere Pro at a level about grade 4 level, which is just incredible. And it just shows you don't limit your students' creativity if you're a bit intimidated by what's considered a professional tool, because there are kids that are 10 years old that have, wouldn't say mastered, but they're pretty close to mastering Premiere Pro. And if you just let them go and just create and learn from YouTube, and we have so many resources out there. In fact, a lot of the time when I wanted to learn something new about Premiere Pro, I'll just do a search for it on YouTube, and it'll be a 15-year-old American boy who's teaching me something about Premiere Pro. It's just crazy, but that's just the way it is. That's the way. We've got a lot of other resources on Premiere Pro that I will share with you that are a bit more professional than a 15-year-old American boy. But it's just worth noting. Premiere Pro fits into the video side of things, video editing side of things, but the way I describe the Creative Cloud is a digital makerspace for design, for collaboration, for problem solving, communication, and most importantly, for creativity. And you can look at all the different things that you can create with the Creative Cloud. And every Department of Education in Victoria secondary school has provided the full Creative Cloud to all of their schools. Same with New South Wales. In fact, they've even given it to their primary schools as well, which is just amazing. And with the South Australian Department for Education, the school has to decide whether they're going to purchase it or not. So, and that's the same with just about every other district around the Asia Pacific region where I work. Well, it's just worthy of noting that Victoria and New South Wales have found these applications to be so good over so many years that they're giving it to all of their students, so the schools don't have to pay a cent, because they see it as absolutely fundamental to building these students' abilities to be able to brand themselves and be creative and get ready for the next stage when they finish their schooling. Now, of course, you can manage all your Adobe Creative Cloud apps through your Creative Cloud desktop app, which you're probably already familiar with. But are you also familiar that there is a browser version of the desktop app at creativecloud.adobe.com? So if you're not used to the Creative Cloud desktop app to manage all your apps, you've got that browser version as well. Now, we might come back to Tim Miller, who's the director of Deadpool, a little bit later to see what he thinks about Premiere Pro. But let's just make sure we're all opened up. And I want you to click on the button here that says New Project. And we're going to create a brand new project. As you're clicking that, it's going to start opening up Premiere Pro properly into a new project. It might take a few seconds to do it because it is a pretty powerful tool. For some reason, it's taking a little bit longer than it normally takes for me. I'm not quite sure why that is the case. Oh, maybe because it's got a hidden menu. It does. Here we go. So it's on this screen. So what you'll get is a little window that says New Project. And this window puts so many people off Premiere Pro because it looks so complicated. But all you have to really worry about is the top section here, where you want to name your project and put it into a location. Just ignore everything else except for the OK button down the bottom. So let's name the project. Let's call it Washing Hands or Hand Hygiene or whatever is relevant to the topic of the story that you're creating. And then the location, always point the location to the project folder. Not one of the subfolders inside the project folder, but just inside the project folder. So I'm going to go browse, and I'm going to go searching for my project folder, which for me is on my desktop. There's my subfolders, not going into those. I'm just going to click choose. And now my Premiere Pro project file is about to be saved in my project folder when I click OK. And if I jump back to my project folder, you can now see I've got a PRPROJ, a Premiere Pro project file in my project folder, ready for me to access at any time to rework this. Now, let's bring up the environment. This is how most films and television around the world is created, through this environment. And I'm saying that confidently because this is a similar environment to the competitor to Premiere Pro, which is Avid. And Avid is a company that makes a video editing solution that's probably still considered now the industry standard for the film industry, although Premiere Pro is making huge inroads there. But in the television industry, this is the industry standard. And Avid have a very similar workflow. So as I'm teaching you Premiere Pro, I'm also teaching you Avid, which is pretty cool. It used to be the same environment for what used to be the industry standard. Back 8 years ago, it was Apple's Final Cut Pro. Apple Final Cut was the industry standard back in those days, and it had a very similar workflow to this, but then they totally changed the workflow. And Adobe has been thanking them ever since, because the whole video production world almost overnight moved away from Apple Final Cut to Adobe Premiere Pro, even though at the time it wasn't as good as Final Cut, but now it's become this incredibly powerful and amazing video editing application. So let's have a look at this environment. The bottom left-hand corner where it says Import Media to Start and has all these little subfolders here, this is where you manage all of your files. Up above that, in this window called the source window, this is where you'll see your files as you open them. We'll talk about that in a minute. To the right, this section here is where you'll end up seeing your finished product as it's being built. Down the bottom here, this window is what will become our timeline as we're building our project, little piece by piece, like a jigsaw puzzle. And this little window in between here is a set of tools, of which we'll probably only use a couple of them. And there's one more window to be aware of on the right-hand side, and this is our audio level meter. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. So the first thing I want you to do is just go up to the top and just make sure you are in editing mode. Notice there are a number of different modes here to get you going and working. Look, 98% of the time you're going to be in editing mode. You probably never even touch any of these other ones. But when I do a more lengthy course on video production, I teach about color grading and I teach about audio controls. And I don't very rarely ever touch any of the other tabs. But let's just make sure we're in editing mode and stay in editing mode. What sometimes students do is they start playing around with these windows and they get stuck, and suddenly it looks a little bit like that, and they get really confused and worried, and they put their hand up and they say, Miss, I'm stuck, everything's broken. And Miss goes up to the computer and goes, I don't know what to do. So a little trick for you, if you start moving your windows around and you want to get them back to where they were, is to go up to the top center where it says Window, go to Workspaces, and then just go down to where it says Reset to Saved Layout. And as soon as you click that button, everything will fall back into place again for you. That is a good one to know, because kids just like mucking around and playing around and getting into trouble. So that was Window, Workspaces, and we're in editing mode, obviously. Reset to Saved Layout, and that gets you back where you are. Now, down the bottom left-hand corner, it says Import Media to Start. Can you go and do a right-click in that window and go to the Import button and then click it? And I want you to go and find your project folder. If it doesn't automatically point to it like mine has, then just go searching for your project folder. And I want you to import these folders. Now, I want to show you how to do this. If you're on a Windows machine, it's slightly different to a Mac. If you just click on a folder, don't double click. If you just click once and highlight a folder, you'll get a button down here somewhere that says Import Folder. Go ahead and click that button so that whole folder gets imported into this area here. If you're on a Mac, all you need to do is just select all 3 folders and then click import, and that'll do the job for you, which is what I will do. But if you're on a PC, if you're on a Windows machine, then right click, import, and you're in your project folder. Just select the folder. Don't double click. You're not clicking a file. You're not looking for a file. You're about to import the folder because it's already got the files in it. So just select the folder, then click the button Import Folder. That will appear for you on a Windows machine. I'm going to do that one more time. It is right click down here, go Import, look for your folder. You might have to move back out again into your project folder. Select the folder. Don't double click. Kids do this all the time. They'll double click and get into trouble. Don't double click. Just select the folder, then click Import Folder. And when you've done that, you'll find you'll get your 3 subfolders appearing down here in your project area, ready for you to start working with. Now, I'm not going to go any further with this. I want to know how you guys are going. Go to the chat. Tell me if you're still with me. Give me a yes or a no. I want to know if you're with me. You've been able to import those folders and you're ready to start editing. A little bit of thinking music as we go. Oh, there's my thinking music. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Rob. If you say no, that's okay. I just want to be prepared to help you if I need to. Thank you, Catriona. Lily, thank you. And Abigail's good. All right. So most of you are okay. Good to go. No one is saying no. The rest of you, I'm assuming, are just... Ryan's saying, sorry, I'm working at the same time I'm listening. I will catch up with the recording. Good. Okay, Ryan, that's fine. This is the sort of thing that you really need 100% attention if you want to be making the most. But yeah, definitely catch up on the recording. And I'll also be sharing you some resources to help you with as well later on. Okay, so now that we've got our folders in, can I get you to click another button down the bottom left-hand corner? There's a little button right down the bottom corner called List View. Click on that little List View button, and that will change your folders into smaller icons with a little arrow next to them. And as you click those arrows, you can then start seeing all your different assets that you've downloaded previously. And I want you to find the first bit of footage that we downloaded, and it's this one here called PTC, which stands for Piece to Camera, Hand Hygiene Part 1. Double click it. Now, when you click it, try to click the icon, not the word. Always when you're clicking things, click the icons, not the word. Because if you click the word, you can potentially change the file name. It can cause some issues. Always click the icon. Double click it, and you'll see some color bars appearing up here in our source monitor. And this is the actual footage that we're going to start editing with. The way you can scrub through the footage is by grabbing the little playhead, which is down the bottom left-hand corner of the source footage, and click and drag that little blue diamond until you scrub. You can scrub forwards and backwards, and you can see exactly what the footage has in it. And that's how editors do. They very rarely do editors actually hit the play button or the space bar to play footage because they're running on a deadline. They need to get things done really quickly. So they scrub rather than play. And what I want you to do is I want you to scrub forward until the color bars are finished and my daughter suddenly appears. And then I want you to play. I want you to listen back to what you're hearing here.
According to the World Health...
And I just need to change my audio settings so that you can hear what I'm doing as well. So I'll just refix that. You're probably hearing it anyway. So we've got color bars and tones.
According to the World Health Organization.
And then she says, according to the World Health Organization. Just before she opens her mouth, just as she's opening her mouth here, so it's around about this point here, which I estimate is 1 second, 24 frames into this bit of footage. That is where we're going to set up an in point. Now, what professional editors do hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times a day, every day, is they go in, out, drag. They go in, out, drag. And it sounds like a really boring process, but it's actually a very creative process because at the same time, they're building a story. They're creating something. In, out, drag. Now to do the in, Catriona saying my file only has sound. Just double checking, Catriona, have you downloaded, is this the file in your footage folder called PTC hand hygiene? Just making sure that it's the right file. Okay, all right. Only has sound. So you're not seeing the vision. I'm not quite sure how I can help you. So what you might want to do, Catriona, obviously there's some sort of corruption there with your computer and maybe your video card. Can you find another bit of footage, any bit of footage that you've got on your computer, and bring it into your footage folder and then import it and then open it up here? So at least you can play with the concepts with something that you can hear and see. Just see if you can do that. Then you'll get probably a better experience out of this. But I'm not quite sure why you're only getting sound. Only sound, is it? So Lily's saying, sorry, got the wrong footage. How do I remove it? Don't need to remove anything, Lily. You just need to find the right bit of footage. You might need to go back to your assets and download it again. But just check, you might have another bit of footage there. Really, I'm just teaching you the basics. So even if you just grab any footage at all, as long as it's an MP4 file or a MOV file, it'll read beautifully. And we don't really have time to go through and reorganize it all. But just find any bit of footage and you'll be fine, hopefully. We go to get rid of the file, click on the 3 lines next to the name. Yeah, you can do that, but I don't want to confuse people. It's not about getting rid of stuff, it's about adding stuff. It doesn't, yeah, it helps. Okay, no worries. Okay, so hopefully now everyone's got some footage to play with, and we're about to go through that in-out drag process. To do the in process, it's creating an in point where you want the beginning of your edit to be, and I've suggested it at 1 second, 24 frames, which is about here as her mouth is opening. And to do an in point, it's just a shortcut on your keyboard. It's the letter I. As I click the I on the keyboard, a little in appears. Another way of doing it is to click this button here, which is your mark in button. Once you've got your in point, you know your edit's going to start at this point, then you can hit play or hit the space bar.
According to the World Health Organization, most healthcare-associated infections are preventable through good hand hygiene.
And I'm going to pause it there at that point because I want to stop my edit at that point. And so I've stopped it just as she says good hand hygiene, which is 9 seconds and 1 frame. And I'm going to set up an out point. To do an out point, have a guess. What's the shortcut going to be? Go to the chat. If I've told you what the shortcut is for an in point, what's the shortcut for the out point? Who's going to be the first to guess it in the chat? Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Cindy. I hope you clicked an O then. You did instead of a 0, but you're right. It's O for out point. So I'm going to click the O, and now you can actually see these 2 little markers. You've got your mark in for your in point and your mark out for your out point. And of course, there's the alternative, the mark out button, and it gives you the shortcut. The O is the shortcut. So we've done the in, we've done the out. Now we're about to do the drag. In, out, drag. And the drag involves putting your cursor anywhere on the picture of my daughter or the chair, it doesn't matter where it is. Click and hold and drag down to the timeline area, then let go. And what happens at this point magically is your timeline gets opened up and that every part of the footage between the in and the out gets inserted into your timeline. So I'm going to do that again. It's in point, out point, and then anywhere on the screen, just click, hold, and drag down to the timeline area, and your timeline will magically appear for you. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to get yourself organized. And Julie's saying, wow, excellent. So it's obviously worked for Julie. That's lovely. And can I get everyone to go to the chat now and give us a yes or a no? Have you done your first edit? Well done, Catherine. Well done, Lily. Well done, Abigail. Well done, Julie. Well done, Rob. Yeah, well, we've got some of you who have done their first edit. Cindy, how are you going? Open up your microphone, Cindy. Tell me how you're going. Are you working with us? Oh, you're all good to go as well. Terrific. Excellent. Now, I'm going to give you a round of applause, all of you, because what you've just done, hold on, you have literally just started learning the basic tools of unlimited creativity in terms of creating video stories. This is how television is made. If you watch TV tonight, you watch your news service tonight, the editors have done exactly what you've just done to put together their news service. When you watch a movie on Netflix tonight, it's very, very likely that they used Premiere Pro to make that movie. And that's going through exactly the same process that you've gone through. So let's now have a look at what we've got in our timeline. Let's just have a look at some of the information on the timeline. Quite a lot of little buttons here. Let's just go through it. V1, V2, V3, A1, A2, A3. Any idea what the V actually stands for? Go to the chat. What do you reckon the V stands for? Who's going to be guessing? Thank you very much, Julie and Cindy. It stands for video. Video layer 1, video layer 2, video layer 3. And the A, what's the A stand for? Audio. Terrific. Audio layer 1, audio layer 2, audio layer 3. In Premiere Rush, you had 4 layers of audio and 4 layers of audio and 4 layers of video to play with. And so you could do almost anything you wanted to with those various 4s. But in Premiere Pro, it seems like there's only 3. But there's not. It's tricking you. Who knows how many layers you could potentially work with in Premiere Pro? Go to the chat. How many layers do you think you can potentially work with? How many layers of video? How many layers of audio? Well, Abigail, you are so close. It's just less than 100. I'll give you a clue, Abigail. It is 4 less than 100. Lily, it's more than 80. Do your maths. Thank you, Abigail. 96 layers of audio, video and audio. It's incredible. No one, not even Marvel Studios uses 96 layers of, it's just, imagine having a computer screen that's just full of 96 layers. But I have regularly created videos that have used 16 layers. That's not unheard of. Every time you want to add a new little asset to your screen, it's another layer on top, like in Photoshop. It's layering your images on top of each other. In fact, what I'm going to do right now is we're going to create a title, and we're going to bring that title over the top of my daughter speaking.
According to the World Health...
Her name is Talana. So we're going to grab the name Talana and have that appear just here in the bottom right-hand corner. To do a title in Premiere Pro, not as hard as it used to be. It's really quite simple these days. In the toolbar, you can see a title tool, a type tool. If you click on the type tool, the bottom of your toolbar, then go across to your program monitor and just click once, it comes up with a text box and you can start typing and literally start typing in her name, Talana. So that was activating the type tool and just clicking in the program monitor, and you'll notice instantly, as soon as you had wherever your playhead was, that's where the title Talana has appeared as a separate layer on your bit of footage. And now you've got 2 layers. You've got your bottom layer, which is Talana, and you've got your title layer. Now, I don't want the title to be that big, and I certainly don't want that font in this. So as I double click the name Talana, I want to show you how you can manage and control and have absolute control over every aspect of this video. I want you to go up to the top left-hand corner where it says Effect Controls. Effect Controls. Click on that tab and then just feast your eyes on how much detail you could potentially have with this title. It's just incredible, and I've got to be honest with you, I don't use most of these tools. I don't know what some of them even do. But what's important here is when you look for the text option, the text tool, and open that up, look at all these other tools that appear that just relate to the area that you're focusing on, which is this bit of text. So we can change the font by clicking font, and I'm going to choose a nice Adobe font. You can choose whatever font you want, and there's a font that we kind of are encouraged to always use when we create our Adobe videos, and that's the Adobe fonts, which you probably don't have, but that's what I'm going to select. And then I can choose the style of font. I can choose to make it bigger or smaller, make it a bit smaller. But more importantly, as I scroll down, we've got fill, stroke, background, and shadow colors. So I could change the color. I'm going to keep it as white. But because I've got a fairly light background, I want to create a drop shadow around that text. So I'm going to click on the little box next to shadow. And look at all the controls I've got with my shadow. By default, I should have a reasonable shadow, although it's just a gray at the moment. So I'm going to change that by clicking the gray, and that will bring up a color palette for me. And I'll make that, instead of gray, I'm going to make it black. Click OK. And I reckon that will work. If I just click away from it, even though it's hard to tell, there is a slight shadow there. I can make it a bit, not darker, but I can make it a bit more obvious, or less opaque maybe, make it more obvious. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because it can get really confusing really quickly. I'll just click away. You can spend hours and hours on that if you wanted to. But that'll do. It's pretty smudgy, but it's reasonable. Now, as you click on that asset that you've got, that title, you can now move it anywhere you want to on the screen just by using your selection tool, which is the top tool in your toolbar, and then just move it around the screen. And I'm just thinking I might even make that bit of font smaller again so it appears there. And I'll center it on the chair. That looks pretty good. So theoretically now, as I grab in my timeline, as I grab my playhead and take it to the start of the timeline, and then if I hit the space bar, it'll play my
According
timeline.
to the World Health Organization.
Then her name appears. You notice it didn't look all that good. The resolution was out. It's because it's playing a low-res version of that footage and that file. When you export it, it'll export and render in its full high-res version. It just wants to use the power that you've got on your machine to its absolute capacity, which means it's going to go low res until you export, and then it'll give you a much better version. Now, I'm not happy with the name Talana
According to the World Health
appearing that quickly. So I'm going to go to my timeline and just drag it across a little bit so it appears a little bit later. But I don't want it suddenly appearing. I actually want it to gradually appear. I want to bring it in so it fades in or has a little cross dissolve into it. And the quickest way to do that is to do a right click directly on the edge of that graphic and then go down to apply the default transition. Your default transition is a cross dissolve, and it'll bring that cross dissolve in and it'll act like a fade. If I hit the space bar
According to
now,
the World Health Organization,
it fades itself in.
Most health.
And if I just stop it, you can get a sense of what that will look like when it's fully rendered. So that was doing a right click, and I'm going to do a right click on the other edge of it now and apply the default transition.
Healthcare associated
So it'll fade out.
Are preventable through good hand.
That fade out was a bit slow, so I'm going to just trim that so that it becomes a quicker fade
Are
out.
preventable through good hand.
That's how much control you've got with Premiere Pro. You can do that with Premiere Rush as well, I know, and you probably know that as well. But this is how professional editors work, and they're just constantly refining their artwork. So it looks amazing.
According to the World Health Organization, most healthcare-associated infections are preventable through good hand hygiene.
Now, what I like to do when I'm editing my videos is I like to bring in music pretty well straight away because it makes it more interesting. It's a more interesting process when you have music in the background. And often I like editing to the music too, but we can talk about that later on if we get time. So to bring in some music, in my project folder, I've got my subfolder audio, and there's a soundtrack there, which I asked you to download earlier. If we open up that soundtrack, we can get a sense of what it sounds like by hitting the play button. And if we're happy with it starting at the beginning, we don't need to set up an in point or an out point. We can just drag the whole thing in. But when it comes to dragging audio into a timeline, you can't just click anywhere on the audio and drag it. You have to choose one of these two buttons in the middle here. This button here allows you to drag just the video, no audio. So sometimes you do want to drag in just some video content and leave the audio behind. That's fine, you can do that through that button. But there is no video here, that's why that's grayed out. But there is audio, and this button next to it is to drag audio only, which is what I'm going to click and drag and bring into my timeline. I'm going to bring it into the start, into audio layer 2, so that it's going to be sitting underneath her talking.
According to the World Health Organization, most healthcare-associated infections are preventable through good hand hygiene.
So you can see now we've got the main piece to camera and her voice. We've got the soundtrack below that, and above we've got her name, and we're piecing together telling this amazing story. Now I'm going to pause at this point to see if anyone is really struggling and wants some quick help and support, keeping in mind that we've only got another 30 minutes together, and there's a lot I want to go through just to give you the basics. But feel free to share in the chat any issues that you might have that I can help you with. Otherwise, if you've now done what I've done, go to yes in the chat. I want to see if you've been able to actually achieve what I have done so far. A little bit of thinking music. Where's my thinking music? Here it comes. Lily wants to know how to include the audio. Robbie's good. So Lily, let me just go through that part again. Hopefully, Lily, you've got that audio track in your subfolder audio. If you haven't got that audio track, you'll need to go back to the resource folder the resource that I gave you. And at the very top of the resource is click here for the music backing track. You'll need to download that by clicking on it and then pausing it, right click, save the audio, all the things that we did right at the start, and then bring that audio into your audio folder. Once you've got it in your project folder, in your audio subfolder, then you can bring it in here. Now, this is something that I haven't told you yet. Let's say you want to bring some other assets in. All you need to do is open up the folder that you want to work with. And I tend to do this by just double clicking, say, the audio folder, and it opens it up in a separate window. Do a right click and go to import, and then you can go and find your project folder and then select wherever your audio file is, and you can bring it in that way. That's probably a good way to go, but it gets a little bit confusing because then it's opened up a separate tab called audio. Just keep in mind that your project tab is still there, or you can go back by clicking that back button so that you don't lose your project elements. Now, just by double clicking one of these folders, and they're not actually called folders in Premiere Pro, they're called bins, which comes out of the old Hollywood terminology of the footage is in the can. It's in the bin. It's unprocessed. It hasn't been edited yet. It's that old, when films were made with real, I don't even know, but the real film. Anyway, they used to keep the film in a metal container to keep it as dry as possible and away from being corrupted. And that's why they use the term bin. Rob's saying he's all good. Cindy's all good. Lily has it. And Heather, when to say. So Lily, you've got the audio. So all you need to do now is open up your audio. It's just by double clicking it. And then using this button here in the middle, this drag audio only button, click and drag, and that'll bring it down into your timeline. And make sure you place it so that it's underneath Talana's audio in audio layer 2. Hopefully that's worked. So it looks like what I've got here. Heather's asking when to save. It does do an auto save every so often, but because if you have a crash before it auto saves, you could lose something. So that's a good point. Heather, just go up to File and Save whenever you can, and that'll save it for you manually. But there is an auto save process, which is good to know about. But yeah, just like with a lot of applications, go to File and Save, or shortcut Command or Control S, and that'll save it as well. All right, so you've learned the basics. You've learned how to do in, out, and drag, how to bring in audio, and how to bring in a title. What we're going to do now is actually bring in another bit of footage. So I'm going to jump back to that first piece to camera, and where I stopped her talking.
So, you should wash your hands.
Just before she says so, I want that to be. Before we do that, I'm just thinking to make this interesting.
Good hand hygiene.
Let's do a little title. Just keep the black there. That's fine. We're going to put in a white title here saying good hand hygiene. I think that's what she says. Let's see what she says here.
Through good hand hygiene.
So while the music's playing, we're just going to have the words good hand hygiene appear. So just like I showed you before, jump over to your T for title and then click on and type in the word good. And that will appear wherever you want it to. And then we could do exactly the same process and just type in the word hand. That's one way to do it, but that is going to be problematic, I can see at the moment. So just make sure you got your good for the first. I want to show you a short.
Hygiene.
Now I want the word hand to appear at this point. The word good's already there. I want to show you a little shortcut. If you can click on the graphic that represents the word good, and if you hold down the, I think it's the Option key, yeah. If you hold down the Option or the Alt key on your keyboard, and then click and drag up, it creates a second copy of your graphic. I'll do that again. So you select your graphic that you've just created, the word good. You hold down your Alt or your Option key, and then click and drag. It'll create a copy of that. And then I'm just going to move the second version across a bit. So I've got the word good, and then I want the word hand to appear. I'm going to click on that second graphic, and I'm just going to go to my selection tool now and drag the word good, because I've got two copies of it, drag it down. So now I've got a second copy of the word good, change it to the word hand. And now I've got good, hand, and I'm going to do exactly the same process and put the word hygiene down here as well too. So I'm going to select the word hand. I'm going to add hold down my Alt or my Option key and drag it up. So I've got a copy of it. Move it across, grab my selection key and just drag down and then double click it to change it to the word hygiene. So we've got good and oops, I did that wrong. So I'm going to undo and work out what I did wrong at that point. Good hand, and drag that up. And I dragged the wrong one. There we go. Good hand. Then move that out of the way. So definitely got the right hand. And then the word hygiene will appear here. And then I'm going to trim those at the end because I don't want them to be there for too much longer. So that was a little bit advanced, but we've only got less than 20 minutes left. So I wanted to just give you some clues, and if you totally got lost at this point, that's okay. Look back at the recording and hopefully you'll be able to catch up with what I've just done then. I'm just thinking, with the way the music is, notice the shaker comes in at this point, so the music has changed. So I'm thinking I really should finish these graphics at that point. So I'm going to just trim all of that and change it so that the word hygiene comes in a little bit quicker and everything finishes when the shakers come in. Yeah, that's better. And that's what a good editor does. A good editor listens to the music and works with the music. So I'm going to play everything that I've done so far.
According to the World Health Organization, most healthcare-associated infections are preventable through good hand hygiene.
Now, what I'd like to do, as soon as the words good hand hygiene are finished, I'm going to bring in the rest of what Talana has been saying. So I'm going to my footage again, my piece to camera hand hygiene part 1. And when she says so, just before she says so, I'm going to take that back a little bit and set up an in point, I for in.
So, you should wash your hands regularly and always after going to the toilet and before you eat.
And then after she says the word eat, I'm going to stop it, set up an out point, O for out. I've got my in point and my out point, and I'm going to drag now. And as I drag, you can see how that's going to insert itself into video layer 1 and audio layer 1. And so as soon as we've got our little graphic, good hand hygiene.
So, you should wash your hands regularly.
The story continues. In, out, drag. But this time it's not recreating a timeline, it's just dragging itself into the timeline that it's already been created. There was a fair bit that we just showed you just then. I'd be fascinated to see if anyone's been able to do exactly what I've just done. Give us a yes or a no in the chat. Have you been able to create a little graphic saying good hand hygiene? And have you been able to insert that second bit of footage? A little bit of music in the background to see who is still with me. Have I lost everybody? Yeah, sorry, Julie. Cindy's getting there. Abigail's good to go. That's great. So it sounds like my challenge is to... I was interrupted, so I got lost. Oh, okay. Rob's good to go. That's terrific. And Sophie's good to go. Excellent. Good. I'm impressed. Because what I just showed you then was starting to get into some more advanced type of editing. And usually I lose everyone at that point, but I'm really impressed that you guys are still going and Lily's still watching. Good. All right. So if you did get totally lost at that point, remember you can always go back to the recording. We're only going to spend another 15 minutes on actually editing because I want to give you some resources and spend 15 minutes on sharing some resources on how you can develop these skills a bit further and then how you can teach your students, more importantly, these skills as well. Okay, usually at this point in time, when I'm doing a Premiere Pro demo or workshop, I start getting you guys to throw in some questions in the chat because there might be some things that you've always wanted to know about making video that I might run out of time to talk about. So if you can throw in some things that you really want to know about, and then I'll prioritize those in the short time that we have left when it comes to video production. One thing I would like to just show you is the fact that the music is a bit loud when she's talking. I want the music to be loud when this graphic appears, but I want it to drop as soon as she starts to talk. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So watch carefully what I do with this audio track. I'm going to take my cursor over to in between the microphone symbol, which is what you click if you're doing a voiceover. We probably won't get time for that today. And in between the actual edit itself, there's a bit of black there. In that little bit of black, if you double click it, it'll open up your layer. And you'll notice with the audio track as it opens up, this white line appears. This white line represents the volume of your audio. I don't want to drop the whole audio, and I could. If I click that white line, I can drop it, make it softer or louder. What I do want to do is I just want to make it softer at that point in time when she starts to talk. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to zoom in. I probably should have shown you this earlier, but this little slidey bar down here that takes you left and right on your timeline, they're the little handles, just like in Premiere Rush. If you grab the little handles, it allows you to zoom in or zoom out of your timeline. So I'm going to zoom right here so I get a lot more detail. And what I'm hoping to do is to duck the audio at the point in time where Talana is talking. I'm going to open up this audio too, just so you can see more graphically. As soon as she starts to talk, that's when this volume should come down. To do that process, it's quite different to Premiere Rush because in Premiere Rush it happens automatically. You set up the artificial intelligence button called Auto Duck, and it'll do it automatically for you. I think in Premiere Rush there is a way of doing that too, but that's cheating. So I want to show you the way of manually doing it. Go to the toolbar, and there's a little pen tool. Click on the pen tool. Take your pen tool over to that white line that's in the timeline, that's in the audio, in the soundtrack. Make a little click on the line, and that creates a keyframe. Make another little click to create a second keyframe. Then click and drag that second keyframe so that it drops the audio at exactly the point of time when you want it to fade down. Let me do that again in case you missed it. Undoing. I'm selecting the pen tool. I'm clicking on the white line that's on the soundtrack. So I'm telling the soundtrack at this point in time, I want the audio to start ducking down to about that level of decibels. I could change it later if I need to. Let's just play it and see what it sounds like.
So, you should wash your hands.
A little bit quick, isn't it? So because I zoomed right in, I had It came in a little bit too quick, so I'm just going to drag those keyframes out a little bit so that it goes a bit softer.
So, you should wash your hands regularly and always after...
And it's probably gone down a bit too much too, so I'll just bring that keyframe back up a little bit. But you can see how you've got total control.
So, you should wash your hands regularly and always after going to the toilet and before you eat.
And of course, when she starts talking, I want the audio to be down as well. So I'm going to do that same process. I'm just going to grab a keyframe there and just bring all of that volume down a little bit so that we're not...
According to the World Health Organization, most healthcare associated infections are preventable through good hand hygiene.
Music comes up, music comes down.
You should wash your hands regularly.
Total control. Really happy with that. And so that's the process of using these little keyframes to have absolute control over every part of this. And Linda's saying, I can do this. Well done, Linda. That's great. And you can see how complicated it can get. But once you've got over that initial hurdle and you've got at least got started with it, you can create anything. With the techniques that I've just taught you now, you can go on and just keep creating these amazing stories. Let's just have a quick look at the chat. And as I said before, throw in anything that you really want to know about, because we've only got 10 minutes left. And I need to show you how to export, and that's really important. So I'll do that in about 5 minutes' time. But is there anything about video editing that you wanted to know that I can show you in the next 5 minutes? Cindy's saying, question from me, is there a way to add effects like a blur? Absolutely. Look, there's so many different things that you can do. If I wanted to do a blur effect, it's getting pretty technical, but I'll quickly show you how I would do it. Let's say, for example, that I wanted to blur her face at this point in time.
You should wash your hands.
So around about this point in time, I just wanted to have a blur effect around her face. So what I would do, and I don't expect you guys to do this now because I'm going to do this really quickly, but I would go to my tools, my pen tool, and click on the little arrow that's on the bottom right-hand corner of the pen tool and change it from a pen tool to an ellipse tool. I would create a little ellipse around about the size that I want the blur to be. And that adds a little graphic, which is in fact that circle. And then when I click on the graphic itself and go up to Effect Controls, just like we did before, we should be able to see the shape appearing. If I open up the shape, I can then do all sorts of things. I can start making, I could probably make that black, for instance, by clicking the color and then bringing up the color picker and making that black instead of gray. And then just changing the opacity. That's just one way of blurring it out. So, and that's just one option. There's lots of other ways of doing this too, where the actual blur tool is an effect that you can grab in by going to these two little arrows here. You can go to the Effects tab. And the Effects tab has a whole range of different special effects you can work with. If I go to my video effects, in fact, I'm not quite sure where it is, so I'm going to go searching for it. There's a little search engine there and just do a search for blur and see what comes up. Not something that I do all that often. And there's my blur. Now, if I grab that and put it over the gauze, is it going to do it? No. No, I'd have to look into it a little bit more. I might just get rid of that and just blur that whole bit of footage and just see if that works. Blur, and I can control the blur. Thereby just clicking that control is now blurring that whole bit of footage. So look, I could just blur her face, but I'm getting into some pretty sophisticated ways of doing it. But that's a general way of going into effects and then playing with the blur there. Do a search on YouTube. You'll get a 15-year-old American boy who will show you more specifically how to do that. Let's see what else we've got, and perhaps adding shapes, objects like arrows. Yeah, look, once you've created a shape, or the best thing to do with arrows is to go and search for an arrow that's been made in Photoshop or Illustrator, as long as it's a PNG file with a transparent background, bring that in as an asset, and then you can move it anywhere you want to. It's just like bringing in an image, but then you can control where that image goes. So that's a relatively simple thing, that you just use the same logic that I showed you before. Download the arrow, import the arrow, bring it into your timeline, and then just position it where you want it to go. That's the logic there. Sophie's saying, if there is already text on the video imported, can this be removed, or do you need another program? Oh, wow. Okay, so if it's someone else's footage and it's already got some text there, let's say that there's already a lower third text that was in that footage. In Premiere Pro, it's a bit clumsy. What I would do in that case is I'd probably just make this bit of footage a little bit bigger to hide it, or I would grab a shape like a black rectangle and just bring that rectangle in over the top of that bit of footage and block it out. You'll notice that happens when Channel 7's using some Channel 9 footage, for instance, and they'll do exactly that. They'll take a shape over the Channel 9 logo and blur it out so you can't see it. Little things like that work. If you're using a program like Adobe After Effects, well, that has a way of doing a content-aware fill, like in Photoshop, where you can select a bit of footage and get rid of it. But that's not in Premiere Pro, that's in After Effects, and that's pretty full on. Ryan saying, have we covered exporting? No, we're going to do that in just a sec, Ryan. Cindy saying, perfect, this is good for if children can't appear in a video. Yeah, absolutely. And that's an important one to be aware of. Okay, let's jump into exporting, and just trying to think if there's something else I quickly need to show you before we do that. What I might do here is I'm going to show you how to do a motion graphic template like you can with Premiere Rush. If you go up to the top center where you go to the graphics option, on the right-hand side should appear a whole bunch of motion graphic templates, just like in Premiere Rush, and probably the same ones that you see in Premiere Rush. I'm just going to scroll through them and find like a closing titles one. This one will do. And I'll drag that into my timeline. And now I've got this nice little motion graphic template. And I'm going to change that from the title to, in fact, I'm going to go back to editing mode now and select the word title, the title. I'm going to change that to the end and just change this text to, I hope you keep your hands clean. That'll do. So there's a nice little motion graphic template.
And before you eat.
To finish off this story. Now, of course, the music isn't finished off at that point. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to make a cut in the music by going to my toolbar. The fourth tool down is the razor blade tool. I'm going to click on the razor blade tool like old-fashioned editing, make an incision into that audio, and just trim out until I find the end of the song. In fact, it might be easier just to zoom right out, find the end of the song and just drag it in so the end of the song matches the end of my video. That's almost perfect. Match that together. But of course, I want to increase the volume of my music at that point, don't I? So I'll grab my pen tool back and bring the volume up, and the volume up there as well. So we've got this nice finish to the piece. It's going on a bit long, isn't it? In fact, that music didn't sound all that good there. So I'm going to make the change a lot earlier when the music is softer, because then you won't notice it as much. There's little tricks of the trade.
After going to the toilet and before you eat.
There you go, perfect. You'd hardly even notice that there was a cut there. And I'm going to trim that ending to out. All right, so I've finished my little production. To do the exporting, it's important to do an in and out point again. I'm going to set up an out point right at the end of my piece, and by clicking the O on the timeline, I've got my out point, and there's an in point already set up at the start, but I'm going to click on in anyway, just so you can see there's an in point and there's an out point. This is important because you may have some stray clips sitting out here at the 3 or 4 or 5 minute mark of your timeline that you've forgotten about. And if you start exporting without setting up an out point, it's going to export all that black until it hits those bits of extra footage that you forgot about. And that's a waste of time and a waste of hard drive space too. So now that I've got my in and my out point, to do the exporting, go up to the top where it says File and then down to Export and then across to Media. File, Export, Media. This will bring up an exporting window, exporting settings window on your screen. And then at the top right-hand corner, can I recommend you always choose H.264 as your format? That's the name of a codec, which stands for compression decompression. So it's a way that you can get your video footage compressed before it comes back out into a better quality later on. Very technical, but just be aware that H.264 is the most common codec in the world. It'll be read by any media player. By default, if it's a Windows machine, it probably won't be on H.264. So click on the little arrow and change it to H.264. If you're working with a Mac, by default, it's QuickTime. Change it from QuickTime to H.264 so that you don't need QuickTime to watch your video. Then the preset. I would recommend that most of the time you would be making your video high quality 720 HD. I reckon that'd be the most common preset, high quality 720 HD, because that'll look good on a big screen, it'll look good on a small screen, it won't be this massive, massive file. But if you are doing something for a big screen, you really want the highest possible quality. If you've shot in 4K, you can export out in 4K, and so you've got all of those options there to choose from. But most of the time, 720 is fine. Then look for your output name. At the moment, it's got the name of that video, that footage, which is not a great name. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to change the name to hand hygiene. I'm going to save it into my project folder, which should be sitting there ready for me to go. And I'm just going to, at this point, what I normally do is create another folder in my project folder called exports. And sometimes I'll export a really low res version for a webinar that I might be doing, or I might export a really high res version for a big screen, but generally just keep the one. So hand hygiene and exports, and I'm going to click save. Last thing, down the bottom right-hand corner is the export button. When you click on that, it starts to do all the rendering and all the things that you need to. And depending on how powerful your machine is, it'll take a few seconds to render and export. I'm going to jump into my project folder now, which is sitting on my desktop. There's my exports folder, and there it is, folks. That is my finished product. I'm going to open that up in my media player, which is QuickTime, and this is now a finished video. It's no longer a Premiere Pro project.
According to the World Health Organization, most healthcare-associated infections are preventable through good hand hygiene. So, you should wash your hands regularly and always after going to the toilet and before you eat.
Video done, video now played, and that's how you do your exporting. Okay, what have we got here? Ryan saying, have we got export? We just did. Cindy, perfect. This is good for, oh, good. Nothing new on that chat. Last thing I want to do now, we've got about 10 minutes left, is just share some resources for you, because I know I really went fast at that last bit, and we've literally just scratched the surface. So I want to show you where you can learn more and encourage your students to learn more. Back to my, let me play this. This is Tim Miller, Hollywood director. He's directed many, many films. The most recent one, well, probably not the most recent one, but one that he did recently was the latest Terminator film. Again, he used Premiere Pro to make the latest Terminator film. He used Premiere Pro to make Deadpool. This is what he said about Premiere Pro back in 2015.
With it, and I used Premiere for a long time. I had a love-hate relationship with it. I punched the screen many times.
I have a hard time imagining that.
It was years ago. But when I came back to it now, it's amazing. I mean, they really revamped the whole thing from the ground up, and it really is going to, if not now, will be soon the finest film editing tool available.
How cool is that? If not now, it will be soon. And that was back in 2015, the finest film editing tool available. Show that to your kids. Look it up on YouTube and show that one. This is a little promo for Premiere Pro that we did just this year to show you the potential. It's not just Premiere Pro here, a bit of After Effects as well. But this is a young person who's made this with Adobe Premiere Pro.
Cause I'm having a good time, having a good time. Students are leaving through the Sonic Man out of you. Now I'm having such a good time.
All right. So some resources for you. The Adobe Help Center is your best starting point with your students and yourself to get to know this a bit better. I'm going to jump into it now. Cindy, if you could put it in the chat, or Abigail, helpx.adobe.com. That's the link, helpx.adobe.com. And if I jump into it now, I'll just show you how to navigate through the Adobe Help Center. helpx.adobe.com. It'll open up, first of all, if you scroll down, you can see the main apps that people search for help for, and of course Premiere Pro is one of them. If you click on the Premiere Pro, oh, that's Premiere Rush, sorry, I'll just go back, the same color. Premiere Pro, here we go. So you click on Premiere Pro, and then go to the tutorials section, and you'll see a beginner side and an experienced side. If you go to the beginner side, you can see create a project and import a clip, explore Premiere Pro panels, learn digital editing, work with graphics and titles. A lot of the things that I covered really quickly for you can be covered again by doing this 18-minute tutorial, this 30-minute tutorial. You can use these in your curriculum, add them into your learning management system so that your students are working through these tutorials to learn the applications until they're ready to go to the advanced or the experience section where you can do some really amazing things as they develop their skills. And that's not just with Premiere Pro, that's with all of the Adobe applications. So that's one resource that I want you to take note of. This is another one here just for you guys, for teachers. This is the new look Adobe Education Exchange, of which we now have over 1 million teachers who have registered. So if you haven't registered, do so. There's no cost, but it's a wealth of information. You can do a search, maybe do a click into digital media and art. You can do a search for Premiere Pro in secondary school or Premiere Pro in primary school. I think it might be called elementary school in this because it's an American setup. Can't remember if it is or not. And then look at some lesson plans and some ways that teachers are using this application. But this is not just for Premiere Pro, this is for all of the Adobe Creative Cloud applications. And as I said right at the start of this session, if you were totally intimidated by Premiere Pro, use Premiere Rush. It's a lot easier to work with. If you find Premiere Rush too intimidating, use Spark Video, because that is so basic and so simple to work with. So simple that even school principals have mastered it. True. Here's Rob the Robot. This is Rob just sharing some resources. Some of you may have seen this clip before. I made this with Premiere Pro, but I also used Character Animator to manipulate the puppet. I brought the puppet in as a separate layer in my layers, and this is an end result. I think this will work. Oh, it didn't work. I better just find that video and bring it in for you, because Rob's going to give you a whole bunch of other resources. Here he comes. Here comes Rob. Over to you, Rob.
Hi there, it's Rob the Robot here from the Adobe Education team. Thank you for being involved with this Adobe in Education event. On behalf of the team, I would like to share some follow-up resources that will not only benefit you, but also your colleagues and wider education networks. Use this QR code or link to find out more about the Adobe Creative Educator Program. This is a badging program that involves multiple levels. To obtain the Level 1 badge, you need to do the Creativity for All course on the Adobe Education Exchange. The focus of this course is creativity in education rather than Adobe. You don't need to be an Adobe expert or even a regular Adobe user to get your Level 1 badge. Inject Creativity Live is a live and on-demand show on the Adobe for Education YouTube channel. It is recorded every second Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Time during the school terms. Each show features a practical demo from a teacher who is an Adobe education leader. The demo is of a practical Adobe application and how that teacher is using it in the classroom. Each show also features a thought piece from a leading education thought leader. The show also features me. Let your colleagues know about Inject Creativity Live and join the live audience every second Wednesday night. This QR and link take you to our contact form. Use this form to make sure you are on the email lists for our monthly updates for Australasian teachers. This QR and link takes you to the Australasian Adobe in Education coming events site to keep you and your colleagues informed with the wide range of professional learning opportunities that are freely available to all educators in any curriculum area and level. We hope you enjoyed this session. Please do share what you've learned with your colleagues and wider education networks, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, Rob. Bye for now. Hopefully you came to my character animator session, which I think was the one before this one. It's all been recorded. Cindy, if you want to bring up the link to where to find those recordings, that would be helpful. If anyone wants to know how to create a video like that with Adobe Character Animator. Rob mentioned the Creative Educator Program. I think every teacher should do at least level 1 of the Adobe Creative Educator Program. You don't need to know anything about Adobe to do it. You guys will be way ahead above a lot of teachers who do this. It's about creativity. We have 15 professors, associate professors, and PhDs working on building these courses with a focus on the importance of creativity in education. So do yourself a favour. You get an internationally recognised Credly badge for level 1 and for level 2, and we really encourage every teacher to do at least level 1. The Inject Creativity live show that Rob mentioned, we had our last episode last night, so it won't be on again for another 2 weeks, but they're all archived through the Adobe for Education YouTube channel, or on that particular link too, you can see past episodes. And the summit, we've got a summit coming up, and I'll just quickly bring up the link to that summit. It's an all-day event on the 29th of September, and I encourage you all to register. We've got hundreds of people who have already registered. It's an hour on, half hour off day where you get lots of inspiration from amazing educators from all over the world who are working and focusing on what's best for us here in Australia and in the Asia Pacific region. We do summits in North America, we do summits in Europe. This one's for the Asia Pacific region. And the coming events site was already there on the link. We have a Facebook group, which if you're on Facebook and you want to get more information about the things that we do, then I encourage you to look that up. And I'll just quickly put that in the link too for those of you who are Facebook users. You can find it. There it is. And that will go into the chat any second now. And yeah, basically, we encourage everyone to think about creativity and how important creativity is. And the tools that we have for you really enhance people's abilities to become more and more creative in a digital context. Sir Ken Robinson once said, we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. or rather we get educated out of it. It's really important that us as educators encourage creativity and not hamper it with our systems and our testing and all the things that we kind of have to do. The next session for this series is on the 14th of September, and that will be with my colleague Brian Chow, who will be doing the topic Making Great Vector Art with Adobe Illustrator. Fantastic for those who want to get into the graphic design industry. There is a link there. Cindy, if you can bring that link in for the feedback, that tiny URL, that would be fantastic if you could do that so people can do the feedback while we've got everyone. And that's also how you'll get your certificate for attending this professional learning for 1.5 hours. So we are just about out of time, and Linda's saying thank you for the resources. Much to explore, absolutely. Cindy, were you able to get that tiny URL into the chat for everyone to do their feedback? Because that'll make it easier for them to, rather than typing it out. Oh, she's on her way. She's getting it. She's in the process. And I'm happy to hang around for a couple of minutes if anyone wants to have a private chat with me or just wants to ask a few more questions about Premiere Pro or anything to do with Adobe. But those watching the recording, we're about to sign off now. So thanks for watching the recording, and hopefully you've enjoyed this webinar. We'll see you next time.